This is Books for Breakfast, a podcast where we talk about books and writing. I'm Enda Wiley.
And I'm Peter Sir.
And you're all very welcome to this morning's show.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Books for Breakfast. On today's episode, we talk to Ferdia about a much-praised collection of stories by Liadan Chuinn, Everyone's Still Here, published by Stinging Fly and now also by Granta.
But first, we're going to travel to Imma and the Dublin Book Festival, where we met and talked with poet İlhan Sami Çomak, a Kurdish-Turkish poet who spent nearly 30 years imprisoned in Turkey. He was arrested in 1994 and charged with membership of the banned Kurdistan Workers' Party. In jail, Çomak released 8 books of award-winning poetry and became one of Turkey's longest-serving political prisoners. And he came to Dublin to mark the Day of the Imprisoned Writer at the invitation of Irish Pen, which followed an extensive international campaign for his release. Accompanying İlhan was his friend and interpreter, Ipak Özel, and we were delighted that she was there with us.
Indeed, and here they are now.
So today we're speaking at Imma at the Dublin Book Festival with İlhan Sami Çomak, a Kurdish-Turkish poet who spent over 30 years imprisoned in Turkey. He's here in Dublin to mark the Day of the Imprisoned Writer at the invitation of Irish Pen, which followed an extensive international campaign for his release. Through his poetry, İlhan has created a world of extraordinary imagination and hope. A world that reminds us how language can remain free even when the body is not. We are very lucky today because we have Ipak, his wonderful translator, and she's going to help us as we talk. Ipak will be translating as well.
İlhan, you began writing poetry in prison, and I wondered if you could tell us how poetry entered your life in that place.
Aslında bunu ben günümüz itibariyle bile
I don't know it exactly now, but I think when I learned that I will be serving a long sentence of 30 years after my trials were completed, I thought that I should start finding something to occupy myself throughout all this lifetime imprisonment. So that's how I just thought, why not I write poetry?
Bilmemin sebebi esas olarak şundan kaynaklanıyor.
I say that I cannot say it exactly because before imprisonment, I was not reading much poetry. I was just a young student, young person, and I was not involved in poetry. So that's why I say maybe that's because to occupy myself.
Şiire de aslında ilk başladığım dönemlerde.
And when I started writing poetry in the beginning, I didn't know what writing poetry means actually. I didn't have wide readings. I didn't know many poets. I didn't know what would make a good poetry. But I tried. I failed. I tried again. I failed. I tried again. Then I start thinking that yes, it sounds like poetry now. Okay. Then I think I choose it as a good occupation for me.
Doğru yolu gösterecek.
We were all political prisoners living in the same wing together, but the other people were not very much interested in literature or poetry. So I didn't have anybody who would tell me if it sounds good or not, or criticize me. So since the beginning, I became my own critic and a poet.
That is so interesting to hear, and thank you for answering that question. We have a very well-known Irish poet who's dead now, but he said that the poet must be the poem's first critic. So it sounds like that is exactly what you did. But I was wondering, when you were in prison, how did you nurture your imagination? Because I saw somewhere that you said the imagination is my only freedom. But how did you nurture it? Did you get books of poetry brought into you, or how did you nurture it in prison?
Aslında
holding on poetry and my imagination as a way of escape from the prison, you said it beautifully, he says, was a necessity for me. Because I was only 21 when I was imprisoned. I didn't have a long life out of the prison because you start knowing yourself, like 14, 15. It was only a very short time that I will be wise and out. So I had nothing when I was in. So I just thought, if I read a lot, if I work on what I read a lot, if I work on my own work, then it will bring me some inspiration. And then I connected them to already what I have got from my childhood, from my background, and I built it up. I nourished it this way, and I hold on it as the way of to escape from the prison, because it would already be a very long time to be served.
Bana kalırsa yani kendi deneyimden
I must
yola
also
çıkarak
add
şunu
this one, he
söyleyebilirim.
says. Yes, I said that I nourished my imagination, but I can say now as a experienced poet that imagination or inspiration is not enough to write good poetry. You must be a very disciplined student, learner of poetry. So I consider myself as a lifetime student of poetry or literature, and then I worked. So it is the only way that you become a good poet, not only inspiration.
Obviously, it must be amazing to be free at last. But you also must have extraordinary resilience. That like many poets might have responded with anger at the kind of injustice of the situation. But İlhan has said, "I use poetry as a light to help me see better." And I just wonder if he thinks that's the main function of poetry.
He says, yes, you are right. Everybody expects that somebody who was so unlawfully tried and kept in prison for such a long time should be angry. But no, I am not, he says, and I don't put any effort to be not angry. It is in my nature, it's my personality trait, and I believe that hope for life, love for people, or being such a compassionate for life cannot be something you do on purpose. It is either in you or not. Fed by love and compassion and understanding and empathy for all the creatures by my parents, because they are coming from an Alevi sect, Red Hat, they call themselves, the Anatolian Alevis. And this Alevi sect, a kind of religion sect, it preaches that the love is the center of all your focus, all your being. So because I was fed by it when I was a young person, and then it came naturally out of me.
That is a lovely response, and there is a lot of love and goodwill for you now. We are all delighted that you are free, and it must be amazing that now your work will reach a wider international community. Are you excited about that?
He says, I am very happy, and I thank all the people, because when I was writing in prison, yes, I was writing about love and hope, but I didn't know that my word echoed that much all over the world. Now I come out, I meet people, and I see that they don't treat me only like a person who was in prison for 30 years. They treat me like one of their family, one of their friends, somebody they love. For example, I came to Ireland, and your president accepted me at his house. And I went there, and I gave him my books, signed books, and he hugged me. And this is something very unusual, this is something very warm. And yesterday at the event, when I go to the event, I see people, everybody wanted to make a comment, wanted to say something as they meet somebody from their own environment, their family. And now I see your eyes, and your eyes are like looking at me like you are my sister and brother. And all these things make me not only very excited, but also very happy. And this international interest in me is, I know that not only personally in me, but also in the idea of hope and idealism. And this gives me more hope for the future of the world.
Sayın Cumhurbaşkanı'yla biz görüşmemizde ayrılırken şöyle bir şey söylemişti.
I was leaving the president's house, the president told me that we should write better poems for these terrible times. And this gave me another hope, he says, because both the president and myself, we know that it is not the poetry maybe that will change the world. But if we, regardless of this real fact, if we stick on poetry, if we stick on the emotions, feelings of poetry that has the power to change people's minds, then everyday people, inspired by good poems, can maybe one day do good acts and change the world. So this gives me a great hope.
Thank you so much for giving your time today. And your poems really remind us that imagination cannot be imprisoned and that poetry continues to live even in silence and confinement. So thank you so much for speaking with us today. Thank you.
Onlarla birlikte daha çoğaldığını,
I thank you.
şiirin daha büyük güç kazandığına inanıyorum.
I thank you because you accepted me in your podcast and you give me a space to express my words, my feelings, and this gives me more strength. That I feel less alone out in the world. That I know I have people all over the world.
Okay, thanks very much. Thank you.
Would you take a photo of us all?
Thank you. Oh, yeah.
And today on Books for Breakfast, we have at the table Ferdia McCanna, who will be talking to us about a new book of stories that has inspired him recently. But before we reveal what this extraordinary collection is, because I think all three of us feel this way about it, I want to introduce Ferdia himself. So Ferdia McCanna is an Irish writer, he's a filmmaker, he's an academic, he's born in Dublin. He's the author of several novels, including The Last of the High Kings, which I really enjoyed and which was adapted into a Hollywood film. And he's also worked as a producer, a director for RTE and the BBC. And Ferdia has also pursued a music career, fronting bands like Rocky De Valera and the Gravediggers and the Rhythm Kings. That's when I first came across you, Ferdia, actually. I don't think we've ever had a lead singer of a band on the podcast, have we, Peter, talking about a book?
Not so far. Yeah.
So Ferdia, it's
very honoured to be your first.
Oh, it's very nice, very rock and roll here this morning. Well, apart from being a writer and a teacher and a musician, you're also a very avid reader. In fact, we were talking about that earlier, and you were saying that you read an awful lot of books. And Peter and I bumped into you in our neighbourhood recently, and you were raving about this recent collection of stories. We're now going to reveal it is this wonderful book, Everyone's Still Here, published by The Stinging Fly, and the author is Liadan ní Chuinn.
We should say also published by Granta now as well.
Oh yeah, very importantly, yeah. And it's been causing such a fuss in a good way, isn't that right, Peter?
There's so many places where you could begin. But I mean, the first thing I suppose we should say is that we don't actually know who Liadan ní Chuinn is. It's kind of a mystery. There's no photograph, so it's clearly a pseudonym. All we're told is that they, because emphasis on that kind of non-binary, they were born in 1998. And I just wonder, I mean, does this matter? Is it of any interest to us? I mean, or you know, this kind of deliberate, and does it affect kind of the stories, or is it?
Well, how much do we need to know about our writers? You know, how much do we need to know about our neighbours? Do you know what I mean? It's one of those. It's interesting about that. Fair play to Liadan. It is a pseudonym, so you kind of, as a detective, you kind of look and you say, I wonder what ní Chuinn means, and you look back and you say it's daughter or chieftain of Conn, ancient Irish thing, and you kind of think, I wonder do I know this person? I wonder have I met this writer? And this writer is kind of enjoying the pseudonym, and of course Liadan is famous Irish name as well. But I think it's brilliant that Liadan has done this. I think it's a fantastic thing to do. Stinging Fly must have met her. I can't believe that they would have not met her.
Jacqueline Mead knows. He knows.
Or met them. We can't say her. You see.
Oh, sorry. Met them. Excuse me. Apologies. Deepest apologies. I just think of Liadan as. But I came across this book in Books Upstairs, and I didn't know anything about it. I just saw the cover. And I'm a big person for picking up covers. It's kind of mysterious. It's odd. It's kind of navy blue, odd. And it's called Everyone's Still Here. And I opened it, and I do what I usually do with books I don't know anything about. I read the first paragraph or two. So I read the first paragraph, and I'm on page 4 and decided to buy the book because I know that it's something really special. So I bought the book, and I don't have a particular type of book that I read all the time. If it grabs me, I'll go for it. And so this one grabbed me. And when I'd finished it, I thought it was the most phenomenal collection of stories I had ever read as a debut. I've never read anything like it. I've never read a writer this writer, Liadan, does not remind me of any other writer. I mean, there are certain themes that you can connect to other writers, and the themes of the themes of grief and mourning and loss and intergenerational trauma and all those kind of, you can connect them to other things, but not in the way that Liadan ní Chuinn does it. And I also, in terms of the style and the brevity of the stories, and the things that happen to you, there was a thing years ago where people used to say, I like this book because the writer achieves the significant distance from the subject, which I never really went for, because I always thought that what if you could connect to the subject immediately? What if you get engaged emotionally from the very first paragraph? What if this character this writer creates characters that you see, that you care about, and that you root for all the way through the book, and dreadful things happen to them, and it happens not through their fault, but in a way through an implied generational trauma imposed by, the British forces, the British Army, and Liadan and Chuinn doesn't pull any punches in the very final story.
Because there's so many things there. I mean, so many things to unpack. I mean, for instance, the fact that Liadan Chuinn, we're told, was born in 1998, the year of the Good Friday Agreement, and that seems to ramify in some way as well, because there's a huge preoccupation with history, with the past, with the recent past, and as you say, like that extraordinary kind of section at the end, the very last story, which is basically a recounting of all of the people killed by the British state forces in this kind of present tense sort of narrative at the end. So obviously history is a major part of what's going on in this collection.
Yeah. Well, it's like that thing where move on, that's what you're told. You've suffered trauma, move on, forgive. And that is well-meaning. And that can work for people. But what if the past is always with you? And what if you grow up in a situation where you see that your mum, your dad, your uncles, your brothers, your grandfathers have all been traumatized or killed by an occupying force, and you were inheriting some of that pain and trauma in ways that you can't even imagine. Yeah. So the thing I think that's most powerful about the way that Liadan articulates the pain that is present in these characters is how direct it is. It's straight. And there's a dry humour. There's a dry, brilliant humour that comes out some in the dialogue and in the observations of some of the characters. But overall, I think what this book is about, in my view, the way I read it, it's about grief, and it's about loss, and it's about the loss of lives, and even the lives that were impacted where the parents stayed alive. Like that first story about the hijacking of the car, we all go. And I don't want to spoil this for readers, but there's a last line in it that jumps you out of yourself. I think it's a long time since I've had that experience reading a story that was written primarily in present tense, and you're in the world and you see the characters, and then you jump between times in a way that I've never seen a writer achieve before. So this is a vision. This is a visionary writer who sees things in a particular way, and probably formed by their own experience in the north, and their own experience of occupation and the after effects, and is fearless, but has found a language to be able to express this without it being... Pulling no punches is a really hard thing to do when you're writing fiction, because it comes across like you don't want to be preaching or proselytizing or trying to put across a message. You're always told if you do something like that, you undermine the fiction, you undermine the belief, the authenticity. But Liadan breaks all these rules in the best way that I can imagine. And so I read it a second time before coming here. And when you read it a second time, you find out a whole bunch of other things, so, I mean, there are 6 stories in it. There are at least 3 of them that I think are complete masterpieces, but I think all of them are brilliant. And the last one, as you said, the Daisy Hill, it's like a lamentation, but it's more like a j'accuse, the names of all those people who were murdered, and then the commentary by the author at the end. And throughout the book, this characters say, people die, and people die, and people die. But in that story, it's the British Army kills and kills and kills and kills and kills. So it kind of, it's angry. And it's angry about what has been taken away from generations of people in the north of Ireland, and also how they've been, to a lesser extent, disrespected and not seen by people down south or people in Europe. And also, the extraordinary thing as well, it's not just all confined to the north. It goes as far as, the Basque Country and Russia. And so you have this expanse. And if I have to say one thing about it, I saw it, I was not aware, and this is probably me losing my mind, but I wasn't aware that I was reading stories after a while. I thought I was watching them. I thought I was actually present in their discussions, in the inner the voiceovers. It was like cinematic. It's almost so. I haven't come across anybody with this singular and distinct vision, and I'm totally delighted to read it. I tell you what I did. I bought it for people. I gave it. You were saying I raved about it. Yeah, I do. You just press a button and I go mental about this book. And I bought it for people, and everyone I bought it for other people. Books upstairs would delight with me after a while, and I just thought, it's 140 pages. It's six stories, and when you finish it, you feel like you've read a really emotionally connecting novel. You feel like it's not just stories; it's an ensemble piece.
It's actually Jacqueline Mead. He always said that a story as well should be as long as the story needs to be, and I love the fact that he's put only 6 stories in, but that they have to be the length that they are, and that's good. I mean, another book that was really important to me as a reader was Anna Burns' The Milkman as well. Oh, yeah. I mean, and that in a way, she opened doors, didn't she, for people? And then you had Louise Kennedy writing about the North, and we were talking earlier about Wendy Erskine. So many writers are coming from the North. This book is, as you said, so unique. I was wondering, Ferdia, because I do think that when you open a book and you read the first paragraph and it hits you, that's a really visceral thing, isn't it? And you were talking about the vividness of this book.
I can name the people that I've had that experience with, the writers. Alistair MacLeod, The Lost Salt Gift of Blood, and his people were oppressed by climate, Nova Scotia, Cape Breton, poverty and all the rest of it, whereas Liadan's people were oppressed by occupational forces and violence and murder. And also others like Cormac McCarthy, a singular vision, a voice that just compels you to read. And also I did that when I was a kid, when I Ray Bradbury, I remember being 11, picking him up and going for it. So that's the way I relate to a lot of books. I thought Milkman was a terrific book. I thought Say Nothing was a brilliant drama series that saw the northern troubles, if you want to call them that, as a different way. And I grew up in the South. I grew up in Howth, and my parents were Republicans, and I went to a Republican school, if you want to call it that, in the sense of Christian brothers who spoke Irish and had a dream about whatever. I think their vision of occupation was that it was someday the Fianna would be reborn. Someday Finn McCool would come back. Someday there would be this, everyone would go down to Trinity College and pull the railings apart and make pikes and march up north and kick the British into the sea. That was the deluded southern vision that my parents had, and they saw it through art, through poems, through what Yeats wrote there. And my dad, of course, was in the Abbey, a personal thing, so he would do pageants and gloriames, they were called. He came to my school and directed gloriames about Finn McCool kicking the Brits out of Ireland and all this kind of stuff. But so when you're relating to the North of Ireland, there was a tendency to switch off, not to read, not to get engaged. The thing was going on so long. What could we do about it? We could do nothing about it. I wasn't particularly Republican. I was more kind of on the Eamon McCann side. I was kind of more, I saw it as a civil rights thing, which was this Say Nothing, that series and that book kind of highlighted the role of those two sisters, the Price sisters in particular, and how they came to true civil rights, to armed conflict. So to read a book like this, which takes a different perspective, and I don't even, I'm still trying to figure out how, if you're a writer and if you teach creative writing, or if you're involved in that, you wonder how people do things. You wonder if there's a process. You wonder how they set down the word. So I found an article, an interview in Talca with Liadan, written by Catherine Hearn, I think it was.
Because there isn't much.
There's not much. And in it, it's just a series that was done by phone, and it's just transcript of Liadan's replies. And one of the things that they said was that if it's a generational trauma, and if I'm writing about these people, then obviously it's my background. So that's one of the things they said, something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing. And then the other thing they said was that they don't write stories in the traditional way. They could never go to a creative writing group. And there's a terrific send-up of creative writing groups in one of the stories, Mary.
Sorry, Mary. Yeah.
They said that they write bits, like snippets, on their own, and they don't do it on a regular basis. They do it when they have time. So, and they pitch it all together.
I wanted to ask you about the stylistic way, where she does they do the slashes. Yeah. What did you think of that?
I thought it was great. I kind of, the way it was, there wasn't a single thing that leapt out at me as being somebody experimenting. Everything seemed absolutely appropriate. It's rare you have that experience, even to the use of words, and then the colour words that the writer used. I mean, raving is right. You're supposed to have a balanced critical review. You're supposed to be able to say the flaws and the strengths. I don't see any flaws. I see...
It didn't seem like because it certainly didn't seem like a debut collection at all. Because the level of achievement in every story is quite extraordinary, and the level of kind of the level of urgency. There's a kind of urgency about the writing that kind of pulls you in. I mean, I'm thinking that story again in my head. That's just the one about, because we're talking about violence and all that kind of stuff, but that's the one in Russia where you have this kind of museum, you have exhibits of kind of dead bodies from previous eras, and then you have people coming in putting flowers on them, and there's a kind of a protest basically against the display of human remains and all of that. Or there's the story, Mary, you talked about, where the character is kind of reluctantly doing this kind of creative writing class, and she's seeing this girl on the bus, and she's trying to put her in a story, and they're all saying, no, you can't have that, or and is this a metaphor?
Yeah, or is this a character or a metaphor? I love that line.
Yeah.
But Ferdia, you must enjoy that because you teach creative writing as well.
It made me re-examine my entire process. But I don't. I think that there is a kind of creative writing course where it's quite how to put it. You strip things down, and sometimes you can be quite brutal. Sometimes the teacher can be brutal. I don't believe in that. I kind of would more I'd kind of try to find people's voices, so I try to encourage more. But definitely there's a lot to be said for somebody who does it on their own and has a vision. But it does. I don't know what the editing process would have been like through Sting and Fly, but they'd be very strong and very strict about what they did. I can't imagine that much editing really
went on.
We'd
love to know, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I was saying to Peter last night, because we're all going around wondering about this collection, that it is possible that somebody is a natural writer.
Oh, yeah.
And it just comes out. And no matter what age Liadan ni Chuinn is, because we don't know, it is possible that Liadan could be young and it's natural gift.
Yeah, the other thing that I like about this is that, because you're often taught that stories kind of have to work a certain way, or you're expecting some kind of Joycean epiphanic moment at the end, and we don't ever get that.
No, not really.
We don't ever get, like, they kind of end. There's an abruptness about the way these finish very often. They're not neat. There isn't that kind of neat resolution, the kind of workshopped story that that you're kind of taught people want.
Yeah. I love that about them. The fact that they ended when they needed to end, rather than they ended when the acceptable criteria had been met. It wasn't. I was thinking about Liadan. I've been thinking about this book for a long time. I mean, I've read it. Was it 5 months ago? 6 months ago? It's been in my head. I've discussed it with people. I've talked to it. And everyone I've discussed it with has gone out to buy it. So you're talking about a book of 6 stories that detail grief and loss, and have a variety of characters, very few of whom get out of it with much positivity, and all of them who are encumbered by the past, which is in this world always with us, always touchable, always influencing the character and us. And I have to say that they touched on something that somewhere deep in your unconscious you bought into. You said, yes, that is correct, that is truth. This is authentic. This is the authentic voice, the storytelling voice. So I don't know about whether anything would have improved these works as they are now. I can't imagine that they would. I think that somebody like Liadan ni Chuinn, just go and follow your vision, follow your own, and that's the thing to be encouraged, rather than can you put an epiphany in page 31.
I know exactly.
Yeah.
I also think it gives them a distinct voice, something that we haven't. I haven't read this before. I mean, I suppose, like, in darkness, in terms, Flannery O'Connor has a darkness that, if you connect with it, suddenly becomes very, very real, and you can see the world outlined through the way that they write. But Liadan does not remind me in particular stylistically of anyone, but just thematically there's a couple of connections with.
But it's also the level, because you're always again taught, or you expect writers to kind of stand back in a way from sort of political engagement. I mean, if you think about it, even again like a writer like Seamus Heaney, doesn't sort of, although that story Russia kind of reminded me of Heaney's kind of North poems in a way, but there's a level of direct engagement you never get from writers, because, like, the way that Daisy Hill ends and the last words of the book, nobody is ever charged.
Astonishing.
Direct political engagement on that level, never see.
and connects to what happened a couple of weeks ago in that trial of the soldier.
Yes.
I wondered about it. To me, this writing is directed by the writer. It's like it's formed in a particular visual way. Yeah. The characters, it's very rare you read short stories where you see the characters instantly. They come in and you see them. And even in Novena, which has a lot of characters, and which can be, sometimes that's the only story I went back and reread a couple of paragraphs to make sure I got who was talking or who was at it. Because Liadan switches points of view. Yeah. So you're jumping. It's not head hopping. You're just. If you're with a character, you can stay in their heads, and then suddenly in the next paragraph you're into somebody else, and it all feels natural.
It's so smooth, isn't it? Yeah. It kind of reminds me of years ago when I used to read someone like, say, Iris Murdoch. She was very good at doing that, just seamlessly going in and out. Yeah. But I wanted to ask you about violence in the book, because the book broadens its view of violence beyond immediate sectarian murders, linking ancient instances of violence, like, as we've said, exhibits of human remains in Story Russia, with more recent killings. And Ferdia, how effective do you think is this connection in communicating the book's preoccupation with the relentless persistence of violence?
Well, it's dehumanization. It's when you see an entire people as not human beings in the way that, say, your nation is, which we can see in situations in Palestine and other countries, Syria, Iraq, and in Ireland way back when. Like there's been, I don't know, a history of that. When to get what you want, the government has to put out the point of view that these people are not humans in the way we are. They're dehumanized. But what happens when, say, that peace is brought to the island, or to the north of Ireland, and people grow up, and now it's peace, so we're all supposed to get on with it and forget about the past. There's arguments in the book between Rowan and his brother, is it brother Shane, the other character Shane, and they argue about Shane is saying, let it go. It was two sides. And then Rowan is saying it was one side. It was them seeing us in a particular way. They did what they did, and so dehumanization, I thought, was the centre of the violence that was carried out. Because if you're killing people, you have to find a reason why it doesn't matter, or why it doesn't. And the reason it doesn't matter is because these people are less than us.
He said that thing. I mean, when he's arguing with Shane, he said like I hate. Shane wants to just forget everything, and he says that thing like, I hate that. It's not both sides. It's not either side. It's this huge fucking army. It's this huge fucking state.
Yeah.
That's the centre of it. That's at the centre of most of the stories, I think. It's a tough thing to. You would think it's a tough read. You would think that, but I didn't find it tough to read. I found the acceptance of. I was kind of thinking, why isn't everyone thinking like this now? Because this character Rowan is right. I do think that there's a point to it, and there's no justice, and there's no accounting, and there's no accountability for. So that was what I've detected coming out, and they're left with the grief that they touch every day. They're left with the confusion about how to relate to grandmas who were in trouble, dads who were in trouble, dads who are gone, moms who are gone, and then the most extraordinary thing about that hijacking in the first story, where the pregnant woman can't get out. The loyalists are hijacking Catholic family's car because they want it for some reason. The man can get out, and he does, but the pregnant woman can't get out because the seatbelt's too tight, and eventually can get out. And then that is...
And that causes a trauma. Then it's there.
That causes a trauma. So trauma can come from so many things, but when the trauma is in the society itself and passed down onto the people, that's not often the subject of 6 short stories in a row.
Yeah. And the final section of the book, I think, is really extraordinary. It feels as if the whole book, did you think this was leading up to the record? You didn't get that. And did you feel shattered by
it feels totally shattered. It causes tears. It causes you. These are people that you can't know, but because you've spent time with all of the ensemble in these 5 stories before, and the 6th story, I suppose, which suddenly halfway through goes into the bravest decision-making I've seen in modern fiction for a long, long time. And again, this doesn't strike me as an experiment. It strikes me as something that has to happen.
It's like you break the fourth wall, and it steps out of fiction. It steps out of that argument. It steps out of these characters, and you're in the past. You're dealing with like a reportorial account of named people killed, but also recounted in a present tense. It's very much like this is happening. This is still kind of happening, right?
Actually, you know, we were talking to Neil Hegarty, the novelist, recently, who also lives in our lovely neighbourhood. Yeah. And we're very lucky we can walk around and discuss books on the pavements. But he said as well that final bit, he when he read it, he went, why hasn't this happened before? This needs to be said. So you are right. It needs to be said, doesn't it? And
well, I felt it was refreshing. I know it was terrible to read and terrifying, and I know that the pain is in the writing, and the anger is there as well. But to read something like that was to see the troubles and the outcome of it in a very different way than has been portrayed in quite a lot of mainstream media outlets. And also, he wasn't focusing on the IRA, it wasn't focusing on the Loyalists, it was focusing on British policy and the actions they carried out and the aftermath. But to be in a situation like that where there is no payoff at the end, where you're left with the pain, where you're left with the grief, and you're supposed to be able to live your life without it affecting you, that's probably the lie that's exposed here.
The British state, it kills and it kills and it kills and it kills. And I mean, as we said earlier, the final words, nobody's ever charged. And the jamming opening of the door to a past, as Liadan says, that many would prefer to remain shut.
Because it's inconvenient. We're getting on with our lives. We're trying to live our own lives. And there is, life is tough. There is pain everywhere. But what Liadan's talking about is a different type of inherited intergenerational pain. And who would have thought that somebody who wasn't present in the Troubles, who'd never experienced...
Well, although we don't...
We have to take it that they weren't, because it's...
How do we know?
We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know. Well,
we have to take it.
And that's what we because I mean, at the back it just says Liadan Chuinn was born in the north of Ireland in 1998.
Which I find, because I know I said that before, but I find that it's a little bit of, it's because you're born on the year of the Good Friday Agreement, right? I wondered, is that part of the fiction?
Part of the fiction, yeah.
Peter, we'll have to get Declan Mead drunk some night and get it out of him.
But anyway, I mean, the message is obviously going to go down from all of us here is like, this is an extraordinary book, and you need to read it.
Also, I mean, Thomas Morris has written at the front an extraordinary book by an extraordinary author. And again, Ferdia, when you read that, judging by what you have said and what we all feel, that word extraordinary is actually, it's really true, isn't it? It is an extraordinary book. I don't think he's saying that lightly in any way. He deeply means it.
And the praise, I've read a few of the reviews, and the praise has been pretty phenomenal, really, and the sense. And what we have here is a vision, a new writer, a brilliant new writer.
Absolutely brilliant. Actually, I've been sharing this book around as well, and I was up in Annaghmakerrig in the summer, and I gave it to an English writer, and she was teaching the short story actually over in England, and she wrote to me and said, oh my God, they were blown away by the first story. She used the first story. Actually, Ferdia, I was going to say, would you read the first paragraph of that story, because it is extraordinary, isn't it? Just to get that sense of, we're going to imagine that we're in the bookshop with you now and you're reading it for the first time.
My parents were hijacked before I was born. It was just before, 2 nights prior. I think it's important. I don't know why. They were driving out of the city on a road that got narrow, a bad artery, and then they were stopped in the road by a clot. People with masks and crowbars. My dad was driving, so was my dad, who braked. The people on the road yelled, "Get out of the car."
I mean, it just drags you in, doesn't it?
You're there, you're present. And also the present tense, you mentioned it before, the use of it. And I was trying to look, I mean, I didn't want to do this as a kind of nerdy thing, but looking at the past tense that we used, there weren't that many, and they were only related to certain. So you're present in this world from this first page of the first story, the first sentence of the first story to the last. So it has never gone away. The past is still with us. And this is a writer who's making sense of it that we haven't, or an extraordinary, authentic sense of it that we have. I don't think we've come across this before. I don't think it's been expressed in this way before. There are little shades of Heaney, there are little shades of other writers who've written about the North, but this is a distinct original voice.
From Derry, I would say. I mean, that's definitely a Derry.
Derry. Peter's not going to let it go. He's going to find out. That was Ferdia McAnna, and thank you so much for coming to the breakfast table today to talk to us about Liadan Chuinn's book of stories, Everyone's Still Here, published by Stinging Fly, and as Peter said earlier, also Granta, which is great as well. And details about this book will be available as usual on all the usual sources, won't they, Peter?
Sure. On the website booksforbreakfast.com, yeah.
Thank you, Ferdia, so much for coming in.
You're welcome, thank you. Now I feel like reading it again.
I'm going back to read it again. Yeah. That's true. So if you see us wandering around the city with this book hanging from our necks, it's only because we do think it's extraordinary, so go out and get it. Okay, that's great. I think we've reached the end of our Books for Breakfast podcast this morning. I'm definitely rushing off to have more coffee. And I'm Enda Wiley, and I have Peter Sir here with me. And Peter, would you like to tell everyone about the details of the podcast if they'd like to listen again?
Well, you can subscribe at all the usual sources, Google and Apple and so on. And if you want to check out the notes that go along with this podcast, you can go to booksforbreakfast.buzzsprout.com. And yeah, so
we'll be back again. We'll have the toast on, we'll have the kettle boiling, we will have more books to discuss, and we're looking forward to having you here. So goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.